You're tuned into the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Zeno Pucks. Here are your hosts, Andy and Brian Matusi.
Welcome to the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, presented by Zeno Pucks. As always, it's Andy and Brian here, and I just want to get this show started off on the right foot. Since, we're now a football show and mentioned that the NFL playoffs are starting.
That's what I was going to say. Damn it. Go ahead.
I just figured the timing was too perfect. We've mentioned football on like 4 or 5 consecutive shows now. And I'm like, this is a football show apparently. So we're going to mention the NFL playoffs are underway. But we are not actually a football show. So we should probably talk about Tamaki. Andrew, how you doing?
Oh, great. And I'm so happy you started the show off with that, because I was going to start the show off by saying, last week's episode, I closed the show out by saying, go Packers and fuck the Bears. And I got burned bad on that one.
Yeah, you did.
So, and I'm convinced that's why they lost, even though I don't believe in jinxes anymore. I was like, that's not a jinx. That's just karma for me being an ass. So,
yeah,
guess I learned my lesson the hard way. And we'll see if they can hold their own against the Eagles today. Guess what? They probably can't.
I was gonna say we got to get this show going, because I'm supposed to come over to your house and bring food, and that's in a couple hours. All right, so let's start off with the World Junior Tournament. We mentioned on our last show the U.S. had advanced to the championship game, of course, against Finland. They win that game in overtime. Great showing in the tournament from USA. Afterwards, a nice moment. They take a picture in the locker room holding a Johnny Gaudreau USA jersey. Really good moment for that group, and really good career moves still for head coach David Carl. Gets back-to-back World Junior golds. Obviously has won the national championship with the University of Denver. It seems as though this coach has not only taken the U.S. hockey program to great heights with these back-to-back gold medals, but he's also, again, done a ton of great work in the NCAA, and has obviously won a national championship, and now it looks like next year he's going to be landing an NHL job, more than likely, as he's already announced he will not coach next year's World Junior team, which is weird for a guy who would have a chance to win 3 in a row. I have to imagine the writing's on the wall there that he's going to be finding an NHL job, and I'm sure by the end of the season there will be some vacancies to fill.
I can guarantee that there's going to be vacancies to fill, especially with the interim positions that are currently available, or that are currently in effect, I should say. One thing I wanted to say, and I looked this up before you got started with this segment, Teddy Stiga, I believe is his last name, scores the overtime winner for the U.S. in that game, and I don't remember where I saw it or heard it. It might have been on 32 Thoughts. It might have been Elliot Friedman that said it, but that was his, I don't remember if he said it was his first, I think it was his first shot of that tournament, and he scores the OT winner to give USA gold. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Right place, right time. That's like when Stamkos played like 3 seconds in the 2020 Stanley Cup final, and his one shift he scored. He jumped on the ice and scored a goal right away, and short-lived for him in that final. But kind of the same thing is, it's like you get your opportunity, you got to take it. It's exactly what happened in this game for the United States, again winning another gold medal. But yeah, to go back to the coaching, David Carl, again, great coach, great resume. I have to imagine he's going to be filling one of these NHL vacancies. He's going to be probably the hottest commodity on the coaching market. Him, and there was a lot of talk last season of Carl Taylor, who is the head coach for the Milwaukee Admirals in the AHL. Really good coaching job he's done over the last few years there as well, including an 18-game win streak for the Admirals last season. There was a lot of talk towards the end of last season about him maybe finding a job in the NHL. Maybe this coming season will be the year he finally gets one alongside David Carl. I think those are 2 guys who are going to be very well sought after. So congrats to Coach Carl and the USA World Junior team on once again claiming a gold medal, and excited to see where the future of this program goes especially for these young kids, but especially for this great coach who is now again a gold medalist.
Yes, sir. So, yay USA. At least it wasn't Canada. Sorry, Canada.
Also, speaking of Johnny Gaudreau, as we're recording, just got an ESPN notification. The Dubuque Fighting Saints retired Johnny Gaudreau's number 8 jersey last night. So
nice.
Another accolade to add to the resume of the late Johnny Hockey.
Yeah, I think that's really cool when teams do that, and I know a lot of people called for the Blue Jackets to do that as well. But, well, I don't know.
I think
it would make more sense for Calgary to do it than Columbus, but
I think Calgary should retire his number. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Columbus should keep his name hung up in the rafters, honor his number, but I truthfully don't think he played there long enough to warrant retiring the jersey. I mean, obviously, I think his name should hang up there, but I don't think it's so much so that another player can't wear 13 for the Jackets. Now, the organization may just say, hey, that ain't happening, but either way, his name belongs in the rafters in that arena. And so we'll see how that pans out long term. I mean, this is all still so fresh. This only happened, if you think about it, about 4.5 months ago. So
yeah, that's really weird to think about because it's weird. It seems like it was so long ago, but it also feels like it was a couple weeks ago. Like it still feels fresh.
Well, if you want fresh, how about this fresh take from Brad Marchand on Rich Keefe?
All right, fill them in. I got to turn my fan on, dude. I'm dying in here.
All right. Well, for those of you unfamiliar, Rich Keefe in Boston, I don't remember what station it was on. I want to say it was WEEI because that's the big sports station in Boston. But he was on the radio alleging that there is tension in the Bruins locker room between Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak. Guys that have played together now for the better part of the last 8 or 9 years have essentially played on the same line together during that time for most of that duration. I mean, they had their line with Bergeron that was, dubbed the perfection line. They were just such an effective line every single season. There was one season where they played like the first 40 or 50 games or something ridiculous without an even strength goal against. Like they were just a great group. But now Rich Keefe comes out on the radio and says there's a rift between Pastrnak and Marchand, and that's why they're not playing together and they don't get along and this and that. And I will save myself of butchering Brad Marchand's response to it. All you need to do is just go look up the clip on YouTube or wherever. And essentially Marchand comes out and just says, it's bullshit. This guy's making stuff up. Pasta and I play on different lines sometimes to spread the talent out a little bit more on the roster and try, add more scoring to each line instead of loading it all up on one line. Which strategy wise, I don't think that's a terrible idea. The Oilers often do that with Draisaitl and McDavid is they'll shift them together, but they'll also spread them apart to, spread the wealth of the scoring, and when they need to play them, they will. And it looks as if that's what the Bruins are doing here. But Marchand being 100%, adamant about the fact that him and Pasta are best friends. They get along great. They can play together fine. There's no issues. They're just trying to help bolster the depth down the lineup. And Marchand, obviously not the best reputation around the league, but definitely did what any good captain worth his money should be doing and sticking up for not only himself, but his teammates and his locker room. And essentially just leaning into Rich Keefe and this crap rumor that he made up. So good look on Marchand and the Bruins, who are struggling right now. But when you're down and somebody kicks you like that, you have to have a good response, and he did. And not only did he have a good response, but the Bruins go out yesterday and get a very narrow OT win against the Panthers, but all the wins count the same.
Yeah, that was the most emotion I'd seen out of Brad Marchand in any interview that he's ever done. So I thought that was really cool. Way for him to stick up for Pasta. I absolutely love that. And the one thing I want to add to this whole Rick Keefe incident, who the fuck is that guy? Never fucking heard of this guy. I mean, I know he's a radio personality, and I'm a nobody dude doing a fucking random ass hockey podcast. I was gonna
say he has his own show.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I know who he is. I have my own show. Nobody knows who I am.
Yeah, well, this guy's on radio. I'm pretty sure he's on. I want to say he's on WEEI. I want to. Let me. I'll find out. You keep doing. Actually, never mind. We don't have to. Yeah, WEEI's Rich Keefe. So that's one of Boston. That's like one of the biggest stations in Boston.
Okay.
So.
Well, fuck that guy then. He shouldn't be on it. He shouldn't have his own show when you're making shit up like that just for attention. That is fucking ridiculous. So
you can be bad and have your own show. Mike Francesa's been on the air in New York forever, and he sucks. So I mean, you can be
fair.
garbage and still have your own show. I mean, Mike Francesa is probably one of the biggest radio personalities in the country, and he still sucks. You can be popular and still suck. So that's just the unfortunate reality.
Oh, look at Skip Bayless.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fuck that guy. But Rick Keefe can go fuck himself too. And I thought I was proud of Marchand. He really stepped in and did what a captain should do there. Defended his teammates, defended his organization. I thought that was great of him. You could see the pure emotion in his eyes when he was giving that interview. I actually thought he was a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? He was a little less aggressive than I was actually expecting him to be, but good for him to stick up for Pasta, and to hell with Rick Keefe for making that bullshit up, especially with the faces of the franchise. Whatever, I'll say his fucking name right.
All right. Well, now that you got all that off your chest,
and I want to say too, because now I'm mad at the Bruins. So yesterday, for that Bruins Panthers game, I was like, fuck it, I'll root for the Panthers today. They're in a better position in the standings, and then the Bruins are like, hey, you know what? We're gonna win a game today. So.
Yeah, that was Boston's first win in a 7-game span. They had lost their previous 6, I believe. So,
I'm just taking L's all week.
But good timing for the Bruins to finally get one back. The Bruins trying to hang on to dear life in that last playoffs or in that wild card spot. They got a couple teams chasing them, and we're going to get to those in just a little bit here. But before we do, I want to talk about a team that was in a playoff spot and has fallen out. Ottawa Senators announced goaltender Linus Ullmark will be out at least a few weeks while he tends to an injury he's dealing with. The Sens, who were starting to get really hot behind great play from Linus Ullmark, now are without him and are starting to suffer the consequences. This team is showing still, and we sang their praises a while back, but again, they're starting to show that without a great goalie, they're just not there. They just are not there. And now Detroit's chasing them, and Detroit's won 6 in a row. They're starting to turn it on. So we'll start to have to keep our eyes on them if they continue to work their way up the standings under their new coach. But in the meantime, again, Ottawa was rolling with Ullmark. He goes down, and they essentially, regress back to how they were playing, before him. And it's not good enough. So we'll see where life takes the Senators, and for that matter, how long Ullmark's going to be out, because it's clear that this team badly needs him to have a chance.
Well, and that's one of those situations that really shows how much good goaltending can carry a team that's, I don't want to say mediocre, because I think Ottawa's actually got a very good team, but they're not an offensive juggernaut. So that really shows you how far good goaltending can go. And that's a huge blow to a team like that. A team that I was actually nervous was going to make a deep playoff run, and they still very well could. We still got a lot of hockey left to play, but I mean, that's a huge blow to the Ottawa Senators. So we'll see how that plays out for them moving forward. But yeah, that kind of sucks. And obviously I love Linus Ullmark, so wishing him a speedy recovery.
Yep, definitely. We'll be interested to see how fast he can get back, and if he can reel the line back in and drag the Sens back into a playoff spot. I mentioned Detroit is on a heater right now under McClellan. They're starting to play well. So again, we will keep an eye on them as they continue to try and climb back into this race.
And I hope they do.
And out west, Dallas is kind of doing the same thing now. They've really started, firing on all cylinders. They've won 7 in a row, won 8 of their last 10. They still sit 3 points behind Minnesota for the second spot in the Central, but they do have 2 games in hand, so they could easily close that gap. The team as a whole, I mean, again, it was a slower start than they would have liked. And I know Robertson still wants to, Robertson could definitely use some more scoring as a whole. And they've been adjusting to life without Joe Pavelski, which I think everybody knows how good he was with them. But I just think he was still criminally underappreciated for the role he played, especially on the power play. Good net front guy, can tip in pucks, can bang in rebounds. Like when you lose a guy like that to retirement, especially when he was still playing at he was pretty much still playing at the peak of his skill level, which was unbelievable at his age. And when you lose a guy like that, you're going to have some, I don't want to say growing pains, but there's going to be that weird adjustment period. And the Stars have been able to hold the fort, largely because of the good goaltender they have. But again, they've won 7 in a row now, so we're going to have to keep an eye on Dallas as they climb back up, because now they've essentially closed the point gap between themselves and Minnesota and the Jets. And so now they have an opportunity. If these games in hand they could actually jump into first place, tied for first place with the Jets too. So they could keep doing some damage here, and they could find themselves really high up in the standings. So we'll keep an eye on the Stars as we move along here and get towards the international tournament break.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on them, but I definitely don't want to talk about them if we don't have to.
Me neither, but it's hard to ignore a team that's won 7 straight and 8 of 10.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I don't have the grudge, we'll say, I guess, that you do against Dallas, other than I would say I don't like Dallas, but not the way you don't like Dallas. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, any team that goes on a 7-game heater like that, obviously that's some shit to keep an eye on. And like you mentioned with Detroit too, maybe it's time. It's right around the season where some teams just start to turn shit around and just make a fucking run for it. And that's what's happening right now.
There we go. All right, so we're going to move on now and talk about a couple teams in the East playoff race here. The first one I want to get to is not yet in a playoff spot, but they have made a really good push here the last few weeks and are 7-2-1 in their last 10. The Montreal Canadiens sitting 2 points out of the final wild card spot, with 1 game in hand on Columbus, who holds the last spot right now. Montreal has really turned it around lately. They're really starting to get the good scoring. Obviously, they're still looking for that next level goaltending, but Caden Primo has not done well in his backup role this season. He's played 11 games, hasn't looked great, .836 save percentage. Sam Montembeault, who was selected for Team Canada, is only a .901. He's below league average. And then they just brought in this new guy, and they said his name on the broadcast, and I can't remember for the life of me. It's Jacob Dobish or something like that. But he's been incredible. He's played 3 games. He's won all 3 of them. I believe he's got a shutout in there too. .959 save percentage in those 3 games. So small sample size for sure, but 3 goals on 77 shots against is very good numbers for him. So right now, if he can continue to play well and get more looks in the NHL, I think the Habs will be very pleased to get above league average goaltending at very least. But the big change for them right now is the scoring. Again, Suzuki leading the way, 43 points in 42 games. Caulfield leading the way, 23 goals, 40 points in 42 games. Lane Hudson is really flourishing this season now. Only 3 goals, but 29 assists, 32 points. We know he's a great skater. We know he's a gifted playmaker, and now he's showing it, and this team is rolling.
One thing I want to add real quick before I get into this, with Caden Primo, I should point out that he's actually down in Laval right now. And I know that because the Monsters just played them the last 2 nights, and he was in net for Laval on Friday night, and he shut out the Monsters. So that was we ended up leaving that game early. I'm not one for leaving hockey games early, but it was a 5-0 shutout. I was pretty over it.
Yeah, it was a pretty rough one.
Yeah, but you got an NHL goaltender down in the AHL, just like the Monsters right now have Danil Tarasov as their goalie. But he's on a conditioning assignment. Anyway, I digress. With the Habs, I'm wondering though, like you said, they're starting to get that scoring. Lane Hudson's looking really good, but I'm really truly wondering, is this a team that's really starting to turn it on, or are they just getting hot right now and it's going to die off? As you mentioned, they're still looking for that. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. They're looking for solid goaltending still. And I mean, that could still be the downfall of this team, I think, in the long run. So I'm interested to see if they're actually turning it around, or if this is just a fluke hot streak and it's going to die off again.
Well, and so I mentioned they're not in a playoff spot. I think the thing that needs to happen for them to continue this push is, first of all, I mentioned those 3 guys, Hudson, Suzuki, and Caulfield. They're outstanding seasons for all of them right now, but first of all, you need more than 3 guys that can score. I think they still want more out of Slafkovsky, and I think there's another gear for him. I've been very underwhelmed by the last 3-4 years of Brendan Gallagher's career. So
so is everybody else.
Yeah, so he's got to step it up. I think Matheson's played very well in the role he's in for them, but not a guy that you're going to get a ton of scoring out of. I think Kirby Dach's got to do better than a -25. That's simply unacceptable. I know plus minus is a dumb stat, but when it's that bad, you're usually the problem. He's the only one on the team with a plus minus that's worse than -15. Alex Newhook is at a -15, which is also not anything to write home about. But Kirby Dach, for how highly touted he was, he shouldn't be a superstar or their leading scorer or anything, but 14 points in 42 games is not good enough, and -25 is a nightmare, especially when you have 30 penalty minutes. So not only is he not staying out of or not getting on the score sheet, but he's not staying out of the box. He's on the ice for goals against. He's basically doing everything you don't want a player to do. And so he's got to be better for them if they're going to continue this trend. Because again, you can't just rely on 3 guys to do it all. You kind of need to you need to score as a committee here, and to have 2 forwards and only 1 defender doing it is just not good enough, especially if we're a team that's still not getting 900 goaltending as a team. Again, I know it's been good recently, but there's still more that needs to be had for them in order for them to move up the stands. They got to get more scoring through their lineup, and we'll see how it goes. Again, it could just be a hot stretch, but it was definitely worth mentioning given how bad they were to start the year. The fact that they're running through the standings now, maybe is a sign things are turning around, but certainly, again, looking for that scorer.
Well, and I still think it's a beautiful thing to see. As much as I despise Montreal solely because I'm a Boston Bruins fan, nothing against the city of Montreal, beautiful city. They do have a great fan base. I've only interacted with Montreal fans once, and it was a few years ago against the Panthers, but they were wonderful. They were awesome. But my whole news feed, like on Instagram and Facebook, as far as reels go, have just been Habs highlights, and every caption is, "How about those Habs? How about those Habs?" And I'm like, yeah, these guys are actually turning it on right now, and I'm kind of like, damn it, I don't want to see that. But if you're a Habs fan, hey man, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for any fan that gets to see their team do well, except the Flyers.
Now, I've mentioned all the things that Montreal needs to do to continue to climb in the standings, and I want to move on and talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets now, who I feel have kind of done what I think Montreal needs to do. The Jackets have made a resurgence here. They've won their last 4 games. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10 as well. The difference for the Jackets is the scoring is much more spread out. I mean, they have Zach Werenski leading the way. Zach Werenski is going to probably be a candidate for or win the Norris this year. 13 goals, 35 assists, 48 points in 43 games as a defenseman. Leading the charge for them, Kirill Marchenko, 47 points, Sean Monahan, 41 points. You have 3 guys at or above a point a game. And actually, Dmitry Voronkov is 30 points in 34 games, so he's almost a point a game. Kent Johnson, 24 points in 29, is almost a point a game. Falls off a little. Cole Sillinger, 23 points in 41 games, but the scoring is much more spread out throughout this lineup in comparison to Montreal's. Obviously, their top 5 or even top 4 guys, Werenski, Marchenko, Monahan, and Voronkov. I mean, that's where most of their damage is done, but Fantilli's starting to get better. I still think there's so much more that we're going to see out of Adam Fantilli in the next 3 years. This kid's going to be amazing. He just hasn't broke through quite the way I've hoped yet. But I know Cole Sillinger's a good player for them. The thing that's killing the Blue Jackets and the thing that I ultimately think will be their downfall if they can't maintain this pace, which winning 7 of 10 the whole entire season and winning 4 in a row in spurts, not maintainable long term, but if they're going to even be remotely close to a playoff spot, the goaltending's just got to be better. Elvis is an 889. Tarasov, who's conditioning in the minors, is an 857. Jet Greaves has played 5 games this year and been a 906, but this team really doesn't have a great goalie in the system right now, and I think that's the thing that's killing them.
Man, you said that perfectly, and this is fun to talk about for me because, I mean, and now that you live here too and you get to go to Monsters games with me, we get to see the development firsthand. And the one thing I want to say, first of all, obviously that Russian line, they don't need any more praise. We love them. one thing I want to say regarding the Blue Jackets is the importance of Sean Monahan, who they're without right now. And he brought a sense of, I want to say, leadership to this team, that veteran presence. He's a great guy. I know we always make fun of him and say he's boring, but everybody loves Sean Monahan, and he really, really brought something to this team that I almost think he's the glue of that locker room, the chemistry in that locker room. And I think it's really going to hurt this team, not hurt them, but it's definitely going to have an impact on this team with him being out like that. Now, if you look at their last 2 games, you wouldn't know that. Jet Greaves played last night against St. Louis. He went out. He had a shutout going until 10 seconds left in the game, and he let in a little softy, but that's okay. But I do think Jet Greaves, eventually, I think Jet Greaves is the future for goaltending for the Blue Jackets. I've never been an Elvis fan, and I know you know that already. Tarasov, I've never actually, I haven't watched him play enough in the NHL to gauge him. And based off the 2 games I just watched him play the last 2 nights, I don't know what to do, because he got blown out 5-0 Friday night, and then he won 2-1 yesterday in overtime. So it's hard to tell, but I know Jet's a great goaltender, and I think he'll do well there in the future, because he will, as long as he stays in the organization, he will be the starter in Columbus someday. With Adam Fantilli, I have what might be considered a hot take, though, and I'm interested to see what you say about this. And I know he was injured his first season with that, what was it, a lacerated calf, right?
Something like that. It was a weird injury.
Okay. I think a year in the AHL to develop.
No,
not now. I'm
okay.
saying initially out of the gate would have done him some good to develop. Not, I'm just saying send him down. Fuck no.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I just meant like when they first drafted him right out of the gate, maybe not even a full season, but maybe just to start him off in the AHL just to get a little bit of development might have helped him out a little bit. So, and I think it's harder for players to develop in the NHL than it is to start off in the AHL, but he's also a high caliber player. So, and yeah, I mean, he was a pretty high draft pick. So you want to get, or low draft pick. Dude, I'm having a rough day today, man. He was 4th in the fucking draft, okay? He was early. We'll say early, okay? So you want that guy on the team to start things off. I've lost my train of thought. I need to let you
Carlson
get back into
him.
What's that?
I said it was Bedard and then Carlson and then him. He was 3rd.
Was he 3rd? I thought he was 4th.
He was 3rd. Because everybody was surprised Anaheim didn't take him 2nd.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. That's what I was like. I would say I think Columbus got the better player. Honestly,
so a couple things to that. Okay, so the first one with Tarasov, I think you're right on the nose with his goaltending. It seems like he's just Elvis Lincoln's light, and in that he's got games where he's outstanding, and then the games he's not outstanding, he is not an NHL caliber goalie. It's as simple as that. I think in the minors for the Jackets right now, Zach Sawchenko is the other goalie with the Cleveland Monsters, and he's terrible. He can't swing it in the AHL right now. It just doesn't seem like there's anything there. I know they are committed to giving him a legitimate shot, and I think that's the only way that he gets better is with more reps, but I don't see it there for him. Jet Greaves to me is a wild card because I've seen him look brilliant and I've seen him look horrible, but for what it's worth, he's had his chances in the NHL, for the most part, he hasn't let down. So I think you are right in saying that he's probably the future there, and I think the Jackets at very least give him a season with the reins, but it still remains to be seen. As far as Fantilli goes, the problem I would have had with him getting a run in the minors last year is that he was already too good for college. I think he's somewhere in no man's land between being too good to be an AHL player and not quite being that elite level NHL player that he needs to be based on where he was drafted. I think he will one day be there. It's just that not every player is Connor McDavid, who comes into the league and destroys it from day one. It just doesn't work that way. You can be a number 1 pick and be a great player. Look at Aaron Ekblad, how long it took him to really come into his own with the Panthers. Sam Reinhart was a number 2 pick, and he was deemed almost a bust in Buffalo, and now he's one of the best players in the league again with Florida now. Some of these guys, it just takes time. I don't think a year in the minors would have benefited Adam Fantilli. He probably would have lit up the AHL. I think there's no doubt about that. But I think putting him against the toughest competition, at least on most nights, is exactly what a player of his caliber needs, because he's a guy that can elevate his game. And I think putting him against guys even better than him is going to be how they fast track his development to make him one of the best centers in this league for years to come. I know the Jackets just drafted a big centerman too in this last draft, and so they have some young guys going through their system, and I think they're going to be one of the deepest teams down the middle in about 4 or 5 years. But I think Fantilli, I think they've done his development right so far. I think a little bit of the onus is on him to take that next step in these next couple of seasons, but I don't think we're too far away from him breaking through and being one of the best players in the league.
I don't disagree with your take either. I did, and I don't. When I say I thought maybe he could have done some time in the minors, I don't necessarily that's not my hardcore belief. That's just something that I see as an alternative, I guess, a theory maybe. But I do agree he probably would have just destroyed everybody. But again, to your point about not everybody's Connor McDavid and can just blow everybody's doors off day one in the league. I just feel it can be harder for guys to develop in the NHL than it is at the AHL level. But again, you made a great point saying putting him with guys that are better than him is probably the best thing for him. And I think that was a great way to put that. So
yeah, he can elevate his skill level. He can elevate to match the guys he's playing against. So playing him against guys who for the most part will be at their peak, be like a third or fourth liner in the NHL. I don't think that's the way to do it. I've seen Minnesota do that with a couple of their prospects, and it drives me nuts. I think Liam Ogren's a perfect example of that. They're just throwing him out against bums in the AHL, and they're surprised he's not developing. But to come back to the Jackets here, I think much in the same way Montreal's looking for that good goaltending, I think the thing that sustains this run for Columbus is going to be the goaltending. I think Jet Greaves probably needs a more legitimate shot. Listen, Elvis has an 889. It's barely usable. Tarasov as an 850 is unusable. So I think the move here is to keep Jet Greaves up and at least do a 1A, 1B with Elvis to get this kid more looks in the league, because you need to know what you have with him, because they're going to get to the point in the next few years where it's like, we need a goalie so this team can compete. And you can't do it with Elvis. It's just not the answer. So now you need to start testing your options. And I think going forward, they need to give Jet Greaves 15, 20 games this year. He's already at 5. They can get him another 10, 15 more games. I think that's perfect.
Absolutely. And, you brought up earlier saying that he's a wild card. Sometimes he's dead nuts on, the other times it's a disaster. I have seen him be superb far more than I've seen him be a disaster. So again, I stand by my point of I think he is the future in net for Columbus. But again, give him some more games this year, see how he does.
Yep.
So
all right. Before we move on to our next segment, you told me we have a question we got to do, and I also want you to get a chance to do Warrior for Life. So let's talk about those things, and then we'll move on to our final segment or segments.
All right. We'll do the question, and then we will actually step away for a word from Xenopucks, and then we will come back with Warrior for Life, if that's okay with you.
That works for me.
All right. Let me pull the question up real quick. Now, I was looking at this before we started the show, and I told you this question is directly directed at you.
All right.
Like directly directed. Thanks. All right. Here we go. So this question comes to us from Scott in Onalaska, Wisconsin. And Brian and I were talking because we're both Wisconsin natives. And I was like, Onalaska sounds familiar other than the fact that it has the word Alaska in there. And I believe if you're from Wisconsin, you should know the grocery store chain Festival Foods is headquartered out of there. Or maybe not headquartered, but I think maybe that's where their original store was or is. I could be wrong on that, but I digress. This question is for Brian, coming from Scott from Onalaska, Wisconsin. The question reads, "Hey guys, I have a question for Brian. I am also a Minnesota Wild fan. I'm starting to panic because this team is plagued by injuries. I know the last thing you should do in a situation like this, especially this early in the season, is to freak out, but I don't know what else to do at this point. I know I'm overthinking it, but I don't know what to do. Brian, you are a Wild fan. I want your opinion on the matter and where you think we're going to go from here. Keep up the great work on the show. Love listening to you guys. Scott.
All right, Scott. Well, thanks for the question. First of all, you are preaching to the choir because I have wondered why for the last few seasons why this team has so many issues with injuries. I know part of it's bad luck when you have goofy shit happening like Zuccarello taking a slap shot to the nuts, but this team seems to sustain a lot of weird injuries every single season. And I think first of all, when you look at the guys that get injured, it makes it even more difficult because every year it's Kaprizov for a few games, Brodin for a few weeks, Eriksson Ek for a few weeks, Spurgeon for weeks or months at a time. It's always the top guys getting injured, and that's what makes it difficult. The difference for the Wild this year is that in the absence of their best players, is that they've really been incredible. I know Philip Gustafsson has been unbelievable for them in net this year. Marc-Andre Fleury has had some really good games as well, and it's helped them hold the fort. The team themselves have talked about the next man up mentality, and that does work for the large part, but missing your best player and now 3 of their best defensemen with Brock Faber's injury, I understand the urge to panic a little bit, but if there's one thing I've learned about having Bill Guerin as the GM is that panic moves really aren't in his arsenal of moves. Sometimes it feels like they have to pry to get him to do anything, but he seems like he's a guy very set in his ways, and he doesn't really make panic moves, and I don't think the team needs to make a panic move. I know Dallas is breathing down their neck. I know Colorado's not horribly far behind. But the team, because of their really good start, is in a really good position where, yes, they're missing most of their best players, which is not good, but they're still winning games. They're 7-3 in their last 10. Right, tonight, they have a huge matchup against Vegas, which is one that I'm worried for because Vegas is pretty much healthy and the Wild are not. But it happens to every team. Sometimes your best players go down with injury and you just have to ride out the storm. It's not great, but again, their good start has put them in a spot where they can afford to not be perfect every night. And despite missing Kaprizov all this time, they're 7-3 in their last 10. They're holding the fort. I know they want to get Faber and Brodin back out there because both those guys can play half an hour a night. Spurgeon will hopefully only be gone a couple more weeks. And Carrillo, I believe, will be back before the end of this coming week here. So it sucks right now that they're all out, but I say all of that to say I wouldn't panic if I were you. I know it's the easy thing to do when you see all these big names out, but just stay with it. The team's been playing good enough to get by, to say the very least. And again, if they can make it and get all these stars back before too long here, they'll be just fine.
Nicely said, sir. Scott, thank you for the question. Brian, congrats on your new one-man fan club. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Sorry, everybody else. I promise this isn't supposed to be the Minnesota Wild Power Hour, but I guess Brian and Scott had different plans in mind. But I understand.
Well, we could sit here and talk about how bad the Bruins are for an hour if you'd like.
We don't need to. We all know how bad the Bruins are. So
okay, that's what
I think the Minnesota Wild deserve all the credit in the world right now for the season that they have had up to this point.
I was going to say, who pegged them to be third in the conference halfway through the season?
No, but not a single person except maybe those delirious fans who every year are like, this is our year. And it's not just the Wild. It's every team that has a fan like that. It's like, oh, we're winning the cup this year. It's like, bro, you finished 32nd last year. You're not winning the cup this year. Just chill out.
The Wild are third in the conference and tied for third in the entire league. And again, that's despite missing so many of these stars throughout the season. Faber, Brodin, Middleton, Spurgeon, Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek. All these guys have suffered lengthy injuries, and here they are. So I don't think anybody had them there. And so just to reiterate my point to Scott, I wouldn't panic. When this team gets healthy again, things should be just fine.
Yes. And again, Scott, thank you so much for the question. And if you're listening to this and you want to ask us a question, give us a compliment, or tell us we suck, you can write into the show at freshicehockeypodcast@gmail.com or contact@freshicehockeypodcast.com. Or you can send us a direct message on Instagram or Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast or at Brian Fresh Ice. With that being said, we're going to step aside for a second, take a break, and let you guys have a word from Xenopucks. It's hockey season, and you're looking to work on your stick handling or maybe even your shot, but ice time just isn't an option for you right now. Luckily, our buddies over at Xenopucks have got you covered. They've developed an elite off-ice practice puck that, in addition to looking like the real thing, is the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck to give you that authentic feel on the end of your stick. It works better than other off-ice practice pucks on almost any surface, whether you use it on hardwood, carpet, concrete, or even asphalt. Xenopucks glide like a real puck on ice. So if you're looking to improve your game without setting foot on the ice, head over to www.xenopucks.com and get yourself a puck. Check out their merch selection and be sure to follow them on Instagram at Xenopucks. And we're back. And with that, it's time for me to tell you about the Warrior for Life Fund. Those of you that listen to the show regularly know all that I know about the Warrior for Life Fund. But for those of you who are new to the show, the Warrior for Life Fund is a nonprofit organization, and their mission is to help military service members and their families transition back into the civilian world, whether they're getting out of the military or if they're coming back from a deployment. They do this through the game of hockey. They have their own team of hockey all-stars, all veterans, and they go around playing memorial games for fallen service members, police officers, firefighters, things of that nature. They've partnered with the NHL and the Boston Bruins Alumni Association. I love that I get to say this now. Back in December, they did a game at the Warrior Ice Arena, which is where the Boston Bruins hold their practices. And they played against the Boston Bruins Alumni Association, and the team that they iced for that game for the Bruins alumni was the 2011 Stanley Cup winning team. And it was just an all-around great event. I got to see some of it online. Just some excellent names. It was nice to see back on the ice. And they do this all based off of donations. Obviously, it's not something that's easy or cheap to do. So if you want to make a donation, you can go online. Their website is www.warriorforlifefund.org. Make a donation today and check out their site. We've had some guests from their organization on our show, and they're just all real good people over there doing good things for other good people.
All right, let's move on here now. Now that we're back and talk about, we got a couple outdoor games to announce.
Yes, we do. And this is going to be an interesting conversation. So let's get her going.
All right, first one announced was the Winter Classic for next year, January 2nd, 2026. Apparently, this league is allergic to doing things on New Year's Day now.
Yeah, no shit.
New York Rangers visit the Florida Panthers. They will play in the stadium of the Miami Marlins. So that'll be a cool one. I'll be interested to see how that game looks, given that it's South Florida. The other game announced was the Stadium Series. It's going to be Boston versus Tampa Bay at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Stadium. That'll be on February 1st next year, which I believe is like a week before the Olympic break. So that'll be interesting. But nonetheless, the two teams in Florida getting their own outdoor games. Obviously, Tampa Bay has already played in one. This will be the Panthers first. And upon the completion of that game for the Panthers, every single team in the NHL now will have had an outdoor game, I believe, except the Utah Hockey Club.
That's correct.
The only one. They don't believe they saw one when they were in Arizona, and they obviously haven't yet in their very young life in Utah. I'm sure that'll be rectified before too long. I can very easily see like a Vegas Utah Stadium Series game or something like that.
Yeah. And now it's time to dive into this a little bit, and it's going to be interesting on my end because I have teams in both of these fights. Obviously Boston lining up against Tampa and Florida lining up against the Rangers. Everybody knows I'm a Florida and Boston fan. Weird combo, I know, because they're both in the same division. But the one thing, fan. Okay, don't start with me. The one thing I want to say is, at least with the Panthers game playing the Rangers, it's going to be different because Lone Depot Park, where the Miami Marlins play, that obviously the reason they chose it is that stadium does have a roof. And I believe it's one of the few baseball stadiums that's actually climate controlled. And it has to be. I've been to that stadium. Anybody who lives in South Florida or has been to South Florida knows how it gets down there. And they're going to have to play that game with the roof closed. But nevertheless, they'll be able to make it work. I'm interested to see that stadium full because the Marlins are notorious for selling like 20 tickets a game. So it's cool. And it's not a very big, it's actually a very small stadium. But it's a very, very nice stadium. So I think that's actually a good venue for it. It's just going to have a weird feel because it's going to be sunny and 80 degrees outside. And there's palm trees, and it's the quote unquote winter classic. If it was me, I would have kept the same teams, but I probably would have had New York host it at Yankee Stadium. I think that would have been really cool. However, I understand Florida is the reigning Cup champion. You want to reward them with something like this, and they're a team that's never been in an outdoor game. So I understand it, and it still technically won't be outdoors unless for some reason they have the roof open. That being said, with Tampa and Boston playing at Raymond James Stadium, another great stadium, but that is an outdoor stadium. I don't know how they're going to make that work, man. Because I'm telling you, I lived there for 8 years, and no, I didn't. I lived there for 7. Sorry. I don't know how they're going to make that work. Hey, you still see temperatures. You can still see temperatures in the 80s in February. I don't know how they're going to pull that off, man.
Yeah.
But I will say, I have intention to go to one, if not both of those games. We'll see how things line up for that if I'm able to make that work. But I would love to make it to at least one of them. Honestly, I'd probably, if I have to choose between the two, I'd like to go see the Panthers play the Rangers. And my wife and I have family in Florida, so regardless, that'll be a nice trip either way. But I'm very intrigued to see how they're going to pull this off at Raymond James Stadium. I don't see how it can be done.
Yeah, it'd be weird to see. Although when the Kings and Ducks played, I want to say they played at Dodger Stadium. I mean, they made it work. It was like 60 or 65 degrees that day. Obviously, that's a little different than if it's 80, but I'm sure this isn't something they just came up with one night. I'm sure they've already figured out how they're going to do this. It'll just be fascinating to see what they do.
Well, and it's not necessarily, I mean, heat's a factor, obviously, but the sun's also a huge factor too, because my wife and I, we went to go, the Cleveland Monsters and the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins did an outdoor game in March of 23 at the Cleveland Browns Stadium. And we went to that game and it was still cold out. It was probably, it wasn't freezing. It was probably in the low 40s, high 30s. But that game was supposed to start at 1 p.m, and they had to delay it till 6 p.m. because the sun was giving them issues with the ice. So they had to cover the ice and tell everybody to come back at 6. So I mean, it's going to have to be a nighttime game, I've got to imagine.
Yeah.
So
I would think so. We'll see how they do it, but it's just annoying they won't do these fucking things on New Year's Day. But I think that's a battle we'll just continue to lose. It's real quick. While you were talking there, I got an alert. The Cleveland Monsters sent Daniil Tarasov back up to the NHL and brought Jet Greaves back down. So the stint in the AHL for Tarasov was a conditioning stint, so he had to be recalled by the Jackets. And
right.
Obviously Columbus had to then send Jet Greaves back down. Truthfully, unless something big changes, I don't want to stick with the Jackets too long here for this, but unless something big changes, at some point the Jackets just need to put this guy on waivers. And if he gets claimed, he gets claimed, and if not, he can play in the AHL. But Jet Greaves needs to be the guy that's starting to get these looks in the NHL because they know the two guys that they have there right now are not the answer. So that's my final thought on that. But I just figured I'd mention it since we just talked about them.
One thing I want to say real quick, my wife, who is currently seated in the living room downstairs, was kind enough to text me and correct me about the Cleveland Monsters outdoor game. So she's got a far better memory than I do, which is not surprising. But she said it was actually low 50s at 1 p.m. and sunny, and that's why they delayed the game. I just remember it being cold, but that was probably when we came back at night.
Could be.
But yeah, so low 50s and sunny. Imagine what sun in 70s is going to do. So
yeah,
I'm interested to see how they pull that off.
I'd say I'm sure whatever ice plant they use to make this rink is going to be insane because it's going to have to be for both, not necessarily for both games, but definitely in Tampa Bay. Now, from what I understand, the baseball stadium in Miami is air conditioned.
Yes.
So that will probably help them. Obviously, if they turn the AC on, I envision that they would close the roof then. But yeah, something that they have their options.
I've never seen them. I'm sure they have, but I've never seen a game, like a baseball game, obviously played in that stadium with the roof open. And I can speak.
It's too fucking hot, probably.
It is, man. When we went to Hard Rock Stadium for Dolphins games, it is just unbearably hot, and the sun's beating down on you. It's just awful. So I mean, yeah, you have to play with the roof closed. Aside, I take the ice conditions away. Aside from that, the fans would be miserable sitting in the sunlight. That's so. But for that, if you're going to play it in South Florida, that's absolutely the venue to use. I 100% agree with them on that. You're just not going to get the feeling of being outdoors, but it'll still be cool to play it in a baseball stadium nonetheless.
Yep. I think it was on 32 Thoughts they were talking about wanting to bring back a Heritage Classic. I think that's where I heard that. And not that they're bringing it back, but that they should bring it back. And I would really like to see more Canadian teams in outdoor games. The venues make sense already. First of all, it's already colder than shit up there in January and February. So the weather's not a factor. This game obviously has deep Canadian roots. These teams really should be in more of these games than they are. And I think for the Winter Classic, I would like to see a kind of an older rivalry, like a Colorado Detroit, kind of something like that. I think they've played each other in a stadium series maybe, but I would like to see kind of something like that for a Winter Classic. Again, I mentioned Vegas and Utah would be a good stadium series. I'm glad they're starting to branch out more, but again, if these games are going to have any kind of good selling point, they really need to start, or they need to continue putting more teams into them and do less of the Chicagos and St. Louis's and teams that have already done 100 of these. So, yeah. But again, more Canadian games need to be had for sure.
Well, I agree. I mean, you think hockey, you think Canada. I mean, from the NHL, I know the majority of the NHL is American teams, but Canada is the heart and soul of hockey. They need to be included in these games, and I'm a firm believer of making them. If you're going to put one Canadian team in a game, make it two Canadian teams, make them face each other. That's the way it should be done. And I think it's fair to Canadian fans as well, because they're the most loyal fans in hockey, in my opinion. So that's my take.
I like it. No, I think that's bang on. Look, the outdoor game, you can say whether or not it's just a novelty or if it's run its course or not, but if they're going to keep it, and they seem set in their ways on keeping these outdoor games, you need to have more Heritage Classic games. These Canadian teams need to be getting outside more. The people can handle the weather there. I think it's even better for the young kids to see it, because it's like, that's how you grow up playing hockey. You grow up playing, you're outside, it's colder and shit. You're just out there with your friends having fun. I think these teams need to have these games. And so we'll see how it is going forward. But I'm glad at very least, if they're sticking with this, they're branching out and doing more teams now than just Chicago's and St. Louis's over and over again. So
yeah, I better not see Chicago in a.
I better not be in another outdoor game until I know they did this one because of Bedard. And I get it, but they better not be in another one until the team is at least halfway decent or projects to be halfway decent, because that was a fucking awful game to watch. I have to be totally honest. Unless you were a St. Louis fan, because the game still counts in the standings. So unless you're a St. Louis fan, that game was enjoyable for probably nobody.
Yeah, and I would even argue if you're a St. Louis fan, I mean, the game was kind of a waste. But I
would say the novelty of the game wore off after they were up 5-1 or whatever.
Yeah, and so. I don't know. I think they need to take a break from putting Chicago in, and honestly, I think they need to cool off with putting Boston in too. I mean, I think those two teams have been in the Winter Classic more than any other teams. So
I think you're right.
Yeah, so I think they need to cool off with that. And I love Boston, but I mean, you don't need. First of all, how many different jersey designs can you come up with before it just gets redundant? And speaking of redundant, putting those same two teams in the Winter Classic every other year also gets old. So change it up. You got 32 teams. Make it work.
Yep, definitely agree. All right, before we go, this wasn't in the notes, but it's definitely something worth talking about. At the start of the season, we did our season preview show. We talked at length about every team in the league, where we thought everybody would finish, kind of how things would go. If I told you that just a little over halfway through the season that the Washington Capitals would be first place in the National Hockey League, would you have believed me?
Not a chance in hell, because if you recall, I said on that episode, if you're a Caps fan, all you have to look forward to this year is watching Ovi chase Gretzky's goal record and to enjoy that.
Something very similar to that too, because what else was there to look forward to this year after how last season ended? They backed into a playoff spot. They got annihilated in round one. The biggest change they made in the offseason was acquiring Pierre-Luc Dubois from LA, which everybody laughed at the time. And not only has that paid dividends for them, but now they have gotten great goaltending from Logan Thompson, who I guess was a pretty big addition in hindsight. But they're the best team in the league right now. They are tied for most goals scored with Winnipeg. And again, they're getting scoring from everywhere. It's Dylan Strome has flourished into a number one center. He's 46 points in 43 games. He's looked really good. Alexei Protas gets better, it seems like, with every game he plays. He's 36 points in 43 games right now. He's a plus 23. He's shooting 23%, which is not sustainable probably, but he's looking very good. Tom Wilson is scoring at a career high pace, I believe. He's tracking to have over 60 points this season. And he's still being the same shit stirrer he always is, but he's scoring for them. He's effective on all ends of the ice. Pierre-Luc Dubois, 7 goals, 26 assists, 33 points. He's about 3/4 of a point a game, which is a really good pace for him. He looks happy out there. His teammates are having fun with him. He's scoring everything he's doing. I mean, he probably wants more goals if you asked him, but he's scoring a ton. He's pitching in everywhere. He doesn't look like a lazy fuck out there like he notoriously did for so long. Connor McMichael's looked good for them too. 32 points in 43 games. He's been very efficient. He's shooting over 15%. The work they're getting on the back end from Jacob Chikrin, that's been a great pickup for them too. But him and Carlson and Sandin, they've been very good. Ferravari's been very effective. Obviously, I'm burying the lead on purpose here. We'll get to that in a second. I mentioned the goaltending is very good with Logan Thompson really coming into his own as a true number one. But Charlie Lindgren's been great too for the most part. So they've been able to kind of play 1A, 1B. And the big story, as we all envision going into this year, Alex Ovechkin in hot pursuit of Wayne Gretzky's goals record. He's got 20 goals in 27 games. He's scoring over a point a game pace. He's shooting 20%. Alex Ovechkin now sitting, I believe, 21 goals shy of tying Wayne Gretzky and now 22 goals shy of breaking the record. Everything has worked right for the Caps this year, Andrew. What do you think about him?
Well, the first thing I want to do is own what I said regarding Pierre-Luc Dubois at the beginning of the season. I was wrong. What a year that guy's having. He's completely turned it around, as you mentioned. He looks happy, and I truly think maybe the guy just needed a good change of scenery. Sometimes that's all it takes. I mean, he wasn't happy in LA. And I'm a firm believer the whole time he was in Columbus, I know he wasn't happy either. And
Winnipeg.
Yeah, and Winnipeg, but I mean more so in Columbus. But to Ovi, man. Well, first I want to say Tom Wilson. I can't stand the guy. He's a dirty guy, but when he plays, he's a hell of a hockey player, man. He is. I mean, that's where him and Brad Marchand are almost identical. They'll get under your skin. They'll stir up as much shit as they can, but when it's time to perform, they're gonna deliver for you. And so, I mean, kudos to Tom Wilson. He hasn't been suspended yet this year, as far as I know.
I don't think he has.
Yeah, no, he's having a great year. Ovi, man, I remember at the beginning of the season, even at some point last season, I said there's a real chance he could break the record in the 24-25 season. I wasn't 100% convinced that it would happen this year. I don't think anybody expected him to come out and have the season he's having, but he looks like prime Ovi right now.
Yeah, he does. So, he's actually scoring at a career high pace right now, which is unbelievable.
Insane. Yeah,
that's 39 years old.
But that's why they don't call him the grade 8 for nothing. You don't underestimate Alex Ovechkin. And when the time comes that he does retire, that's going to be a huge blow to the entire league, because I don't know anybody who doesn't like Alex Ovechkin. That being said, I hope he stays on this pace. I don't think there's a person out there who doesn't want to see him break the record this season. I know Gretzky's excited to see him break the record, which speaks volumes not only to the kind of person that Gretzky is, but to the type of person and player that Ovechkin is. For the guy who currently holds that record to be excited to see you break his record that he's held for so many years, that speaks volumes about you as the player who's going to do it. So, he's one of the most respected players in the league. He's one of the best players to ever play the game. Definitely the best goal scorer of all time, obviously. So it's just exciting. The Caps are fun to watch this year. And yeah, I think you and I, like a lot of other people, were very wrong in our preseason predictions regarding this team. But if you're a Caps fan, you got to be loving every second of this, because I'm not even a Caps fan and I think it's incredible. And I said to you before the show started, or before we started this show today, I said Washington is one of those teams where, they could win the cup every year and I wouldn't even be mad about it. They're just a great organization. They have a great fan base. Everything about them is awesome. So enjoy Ovi while he's still here. Enjoy this goal chase. And honestly, I know they're in the same conference as my teams, but I wish them luck the rest of the season. I hope that they can really do something special with this team.
Yeah, and I mentioned his name earlier, but not to undersell the work Logan Thompson's done. I knew he'd been good.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he'd been this good. Logan Thompson, since coming over from Vegas, 18-2-3, a 232 goals against average, and a 919 save percentage. He's been absolutely incredible for them. Charlie Lindgren has taken a little step back this year. He's a 901 and a 265 goals against average, but still serviceable. He's still got 10 wins for them. He does have 10 total losses, but yeah, Logan Thompson's work has been a huge part of why they've been this good. I mean, they're already shooting really high. I mean, I think I didn't look to double check, but they probably have, I would think, the best PDO in the league, which is shooting percentage and save percentage combined. They've got to be near the top when you have, all of your top 6 or 7 guys are all shooting 15%, and you have guys further down the lineup shooting, 17, 14%, 25%. I mean, part of it, I'm sure, is a little bit of luck just based on how high their PDO is. But again, even if the shooting percentage regresses a little, if Logan Thompson stays at or even close to where he's been, save percentage wise, this is going to be one of the top 5 teams in the league to finish the year. I mean, they're just, everything's going right. It's fun to watch. It's cool that not only are they winning, but Ovi's been playing a critical role in so many of the games. And I know there's comments out there on social media of, look, he's an empty net merchant. He's lazy. He's this or that. I'm like, the reality is the guy's 39 years old and he's scoring at first of all, the highest pace in his career, but he's tracking to break the all-time goals record. The fact that he's even playing at this level at 39 should be respected, but guys are out here talking about he's an empty net merchant. So when you see guys like that making those comments, just ignore it, because immediately when I see shit like that, I assume that these people don't watch or know anything about the sport of hockey and that they're just haters. Because if anybody does this, I mean, if anybody's 39 years old and they're scoring like almost a goal a game pace and they're scoring over a point per game, that's incredible work. That's unbelievable to be scoring like that. So this would be a great season for anybody at this age, but the fact that it's one of the best players of all time and he's still doing it at 39, anybody that has anything bad to say can go fuck themselves. So put it very simply.
Well, I'm with you. My whole thing with people, with haters, especially for players at the caliber that Ovechkin is at, I don't understand, as a fan of the sport, how you can be so bitter to the point where you can't allow yourself to enjoy watching history be made. I will never understand that. And, you always say we're not a football podcast, but it was the same way with people with Tom Brady. And I didn't care for Tom Brady at all. And I can't stand the Patriots. But it's like, I wasn't going to allow myself to not appreciate watching NFL records be set. And it's the same way in the NHL. I'm not going to watch these guys who you're probably never going to see players like that ever again. I mean, we still have McDavid in the league and whatnot, but I'm talking like Crosby and Ovechkin. You're going to sit there and be so spiteful for these guys instead of allowing yourself to appreciate everything they've done and are continuing to do, especially given their ages in the league. It's just absolutely incredible. And why you wouldn't want to sit there and enjoy seeing this is beyond me.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. I'm like, I saw one comment. It was either last night or this morning. I don't remember now, but somebody seriously said, "Well, Gretzky had all these goals, but he had 2,800 points. Ovechkin only has 1,500." I'm like, only 1,500? Are you fucking
Yeah,
stupid?
dude.
How many guys have scored 1,500? I'm gonna look this up. You can retort to this comment, but
I got something to say. First of all,
I'm gonna look this up though to see how many guys have scored 1,500. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. The one thing I want to say in response to that. Okay. First, I am not discrediting or taking away from anything Wayne Gretzky did in his career for the sport of hockey. But you also have to remember Gretzky was a phenomenal hockey player. He was unreal to watch, but he also played the majority of his career was played in an era where goalies flopped around all the time. I mean,
he played against some bums in the 80s for sure.
He absolutely did. And goaltending in the 80s is completely different from goaltending now. The goalies we see nowadays in this era of hockey are so much more acrobatic than the goalies back then, especially with the implementation of butterfly goaltending. Yeah. It's just that wasn't a thing in his era. So, I mean, you look at a lot of Gretzky's goals that he scored back in the day, and a lot of those are goals that would have for sure been saved in today's era, but it was just a different style of hockey back then. And guys are a lot more athletic than they were back in the day. And again, I'm not discrediting Gretzky, because I think you put him in his prime in today's league and he's still one of the best players of all time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to use this segment. I don't want to take away what Gretzky's done, because I don't think that's the focus of either of our opinions. It's just,
no.
First of all, Gretzky's the only guy to even score over 2,000 points. The closest next to him was Jagr, who had 1921. I found the number: 16 players in NHL history have scored at least 1,500 points, and that's it. And Ovechkin's one of them. Ovechkin is currently 12th all-time in NHL scoring. By the time this season ends, because he's only 8 points behind Phil Esposito at 11, by the time this season ends, there's a chance he could be 10th overall. He's for sure probably going to be 11th. Crosby's 9th, by the way. He's got 1,643 points, which is crazy. So Ovechkin's done something only 15 other guys have ever done. So to the person who made that stupid ass comment, first of all, you're a fucking idiot, and second of all, it shows even more how impressive Ovechkin is to not only have all these goals, but to be eventually going to be one of the top 10 scorers in this league of all time. This guy's career is nothing short of outstanding. I mean, he's just unbelievable. If it weren't for how crazy otherworldly good Sid's career's been, I would think we'd be talking about Ovi as a guy that's going to bypass the 3-year waiting period for the Hall of Fame.
100%. I think they both should. And yeah, okay, he's got 1,500 points, and you went on that. But here's the thing: nobody's trying to say that Ovi's better than Gretzky or that Ovi's the best player of all the time. But without a doubt, Alexander Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer of all time, and I don't care about that or what other people have to say about that. That's a fact, and I will die on that hill. Obviously Gretzky's the all-around better player, but Ovi is an absolute unit. First of all, aside from how great he is at scoring, the guy's a unit on the ice. He's a heavy hitter. Like he can be a brawler when he needs to be. He doesn't mess around. He's got that Russian blood in him, man, and he is just, he is a god among men on the ice, even at 39 years old, which is, again, to be performing to this caliber at that age in a league that's as skilled and as fast as it is in this day and age is just incredible. So
can we talk about the fact that Lemieux had 1,723 points in only 915 games?
Well, so here's the other thing. Everybody
crazy.
Everybody knows what Lemieux went through with his cancer and everything.
Yep.
Now you factor in how much time he missed. If he wouldn't have missed all that time, there's a good, he probably passes Gretzky, or at least not passes him, gets really damn close to Gretzky.
They scored at about the same pace for their career. He probably, I honestly think they would have easily been 1 and 2, but I pulled up the all-time scoring list because I wanted to see just how many games played some of these guys have, which is crazy. The player I want to look at now, though, we talked about, we'll never see a player like Gretzky again. And you're right. It'll never happen that somebody gets 2,800 points. You just have to be too good for too long. I think, you're going to figure out where I'm going really fast with this.
Yep.
There's a guy in the league right now who's
And
probably
his name
going to
starts
be
with a C.
and he's going to probably be the second guy to ever hit 2,000 points if he tracks even semi close to where he's at right now. Connor McDavid has 1,040 points in only 684 games.
Exactly.
Now, that is an unreal pace. I mean, to even semi keep that up will be impressive, but let's say he stays healthy. Let's cross our fingers he's healthy his whole career. Connor McDavid's probably going to play 1,500 games, hopefully, maybe 1,400. If all goes well, if he's able, he started at 18, which is what you need to play that many games. You need to start super young. And if he can play all the way until he's 40 and be semi-effective, it is not unreasonable to believe that this guy's going to clear 2,000, 2,100, or even 2,100 points in the late stages of his career. I mean, I don't think we'll ever see somebody score at the click you're going to need to pass Gretzky, but
No.
I don't think, I think we're 10, 12 years away from McDavid crossing the 2,000 point threshold.
Yeah. No, first of all, I agree wholeheartedly. Connor McDavid will break 2,000 points as long as he stays healthy and plays till he's 40. There's no question there. As far as Gretzky's point record goes, and again, a lot of this is due to the lackluster goaltending that occurred in that era. Gretzky's points record will never be broken. And that's just the way it is. I especially, as I mentioned earlier, how fast and skilled this game is in this day and age. It's not possible in my opinion. I mean, nothing's impossible, but it's to score at that rate in today's day and age is incredibly difficult. And to see some of the best players that you'll ever see play, like Connor McDavid, who will probably pass 2,000 and still aren't even going to be anywhere near touching Gretzky. And then look at Jágr, 1,900 something points, and he wasn't even close, and he had to play till he was 50 almost. Well, he was like 45, but still.
Yeah, well, exactly. For McDavid, it's worth noting, though. I mean, for anybody to pass Gretzky, you'd have to play 20 years, and you have to average something like 145 points a season, which is hilarious. It just shows how cartoony Gretzky's numbers were. But like I said, I think McDavid, let's pull up his career here. This has kind of gone off the rails, but now I've gotten more
doing
interested.
that. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've gotten really interested in seeing his career spreads because this guy's just hilarious. Here are the point totals for McDavid seasons in his career. So his rookie season famously had the injury, but still scored 48 points in 45 games. And here are the rest of the totals. Since then, 100 points, 108 points, 116 points, 97 points in the 1920 season, but he only played 64 games because the season was cut short. That would have easily been another 100-point season. 105 points, 123 points, 153 points, 132 points, and now this year so far, 58 points in 39 games. He's tracking, I believe, to have another 100-point season. I think the math works there. Yeah, he's projecting right now, according to ESPN.com, to have 113 points on the season. What would be a little bit of a down year for him, but still over 110 is, I think anything over 110, you're happy with Connor McDavid. You know he can get to 130 and even higher, but anything over 110 is what you need to have from a guy that's that good. And I think he can go on a heater and pick it up and even do more than that. But you look at those numbers for McDavid, all those unbelievably crazy seasons he's had, and I think for his career, he'll probably still be 700-800 points short of Wayne, which is crazy to think that he's this good. We'll never see probably another player this good for another 30, 40, 50 years or longer. And he's still going to come up that short of Wayne's record. So I want to tie all this back to the beginning where I said to hate on Ovi for only having 1,500 points. The best players in the history of this league aren't even close to Wayne. So let's just appreciate all the good players this league has to offer instead of saying dumb shit like a guy only has 1,500 points. Let's be happy that a historic record that was once thought to be unbeatable could now be broken in the next couple months.
Yeah, my thing with McDavid is too. Okay, you and I both love Connor McDavid, and yes. He falls into that category of no matter how good you are, there's always going to be people who hate on you, and that goes back to my point of just fucking enjoy watching it. But my thing with McDavid is, and I know you agree with me, is in his career he's going to have to win a cup, or that's all people are going to talk about when he retires is that he never won a cup, no matter what he does in the league. And it was the same way with Ovi. And thank God Ovi won it in 2018. But it's going to be the same for McDavid. He's going to have to win a cup. And the one thing I really admire about the guy is how loyal he is to Edmonton. And he doesn't want to go anywhere because he truly believes that they can win it with the group they have. And that speaks volumes. And that just shows that not only is he a phenomenal player, but he's the right guy to be wearing the C in that organization.
Yeah, definitely. I think the time will come for the Oilers. I think the biggest thing that they deal with is the goaltending. It's always a matter of is Stuart Skinner on or not, and we could talk about this in a different show, but it's just like you said, much the same way Ovi was so dogged on for not winning a cup. I think we're gonna get to that point with McDavid, and it's already kind of starting, especially since he lost in the finals. Now it's already starting with he's good, but he hasn't won. Now I'm with you. I don't support that argument, but you'll never hear the end of it if he doesn't win one. So I'm with you and hoping he does win one, because this guy is going to be skill-wise, Connor McDavid is probably the best player that's ever laced up a pair of ice skates. And I say that and I mean it 100%. Sid's great. You could probably say they're 1 and 2. Gretzky's definitely up there, probably the third, and Lemieux as well. Those guys are good, but Sid is on another level, and I think McDavid, I know he doesn't have the championship pedigree that Crosby does, but as far as individual skill goes, I don't think anybody's ever been better at this game than Connor McDavid.
Yeah, I just don't know. He's a once in a generation, once in a lifetime player, and like you mentioned earlier, it'll probably be 30 years at least before we see another player of his caliber. I just don't know that there's anybody as this game grows and as time goes on. This game only gets faster and more athletic with each year that passes, and so it's going to be more difficult to come by players of his caliber. So I think enjoy the time that we have with him, because it's something that you're only going to see once in your lifetime.
I was going to say, I mean, we're already running out of years. Ovi's probably done after next season. That's when his contract expires. Yeah. Sid's probably only got 2 years left. Like, we're getting to the end of that 2000s era of great players. We're really getting to the twilight of that, and now it's time for the guys from the 2010s to step up. And obviously, we've already been in good hands with the likes of Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Nathan McKinnon, Kirill Kaprizov, Sam Reinhart, Alex Barkov. We're in really good hands right now. This league has really talented players. You know, Matthews, the Hughes brothers. Like, there is some elite talent in this league now. But again, appreciate the all-time greats while we still have them in the league, because 3 years from now, I don't think either of Sid or Ovi will be in the league, and it'll be really weird without him there.
So I have 2 things I want to say before I close the show out, or before we close the show out. One of them is unrelated to this conversation, but the other one is regarding Ovechkin. So I'll do that first. It's a question for you. Say Ovi breaks Gretzky's goal record this year. Like, this season, he breaks the record. I know he has 1 year left on his contract. If he breaks the record this year, do you think he hangs up the skates, or do you think he still finishes out his contract?
I think the only way, and even then I'm not sure, but I think the only way Alex Ovechkin retires this year, first of all, he would have to break the goals record. I think he will, barring injury. I don't see a world where he doesn't. The only way he retires this year is if he breaks that goals record and then the Capitals win the Stanley Cup. If the Capitals win it all this year and he breaks the goal record, I could think of no better way to end your career. If you have 2 Stanley Cups, the all-time goals record, and your last season you win the cup, I think that's how you ride off into the sunset. I don't think anybody would hold it against him for doing so. Plus, Ovi has mentioned wanting to play at home in Russia before he completely retires from hockey. So right. I think if the Caps go out and win the Stanley Cup, if I'm him, I'm like, okay, I'm still healthy. I'll be done in the NHL now. I'll go home and play a season in the KHL, and then I can be done. I think that's probably a realistic track. But if first of all, if he doesn't break the record this year, obviously
correct,
next year. And I think if he breaks it, but they don't win it all, but they have a really good season, I think he sticks around to see if they can make another run next year. But if he breaks the record and they win the Stanley Cup, I think that's the last season we see of Ovi here.
Perfectly said. Couldn't agree more. That beautifully said. The last thing I have, and it's not a question, it's just something that I want to make note of to the hockey community, and it's just an opinion I have on this player, and it's Ryan O'Reilly. I'm a huge fan of Ryan O'Reilly. I always have been. I love the guy to death. I think if you could make somebody captain of the entire league, I would pick Ryan O'Reilly. And I just want to point out something that he did, and it was so small and just irrelevant, but it just really speaks volumes to who he is. I was watching the other day. I forgot who Nashville was playing. But I don't remember if it was a post-game interview or an intermission interview, but they were interviewing him, and all the answers. First of all, you could see that he was happy to be there giving that interview. All the answers he gave were very professional, in-depth answers. They weren't like your typical interview with a player where it's just like, oh yeah, and they say the same shit that everybody else always says because they're in a hurry to get back to the locker room. He was giving real detailed answers. He was enjoying the conversation. He made sure the guy interviewing him knew he had his full undivided attention. And then the guy said, "Hey Ryan, thanks for being here." He said, "My pleasure," before he walked away. That is who Ryan O'Reilly is. Aside from being a good player, he's just an all-around great dude. Everybody loves him, and that's why I love the guy. So I just wanted to commend him just for being a good guy who cares about the game as a whole, not just the on-ice product.
Yeah, definitely a model citizen as far as NHL players go. He's a hard-nosed player, but he's not dirty. He's tough. I mean, he won the Lady Byng in 2014, won the Selke in 2019. Obviously, he's a Stanley Cup Conn Smythe winner. Just everything this guy does is the right way. And I know he went through some hard times in Buffalo, but everybody that played in Buffalo went through hard times in Buffalo. So I will never, ever hold that against him. He's such a gifted player. He's the king of the face-off circle on most nights, it feels like. He's just a good dude. And I think your opinion's right on him. He's who you, if you're picking a team and you can't have your McDavids and Crosbys and McKinnons, this is the kind of guy you start building a team around. A good leader, a guy that's got championship pedigree. He's not going to score 50 goals a season or anything crazy, but he's going to get you points where you need him. And he's never a liability. Just on and off the ice, I don't think you could put together a much better person than Ryan O'Reilly.
Absolutely. He is the embodiment of what everybody in the NHL, and honestly, who every person should strive to be. He's just an all-around great guy. And we're lucky to have him in the NHL. So kudos to Ryan O'Reilly, man. But we usually try to keep our shows around an hour, and we're at almost an hour and a half. So we should probably wrap this shit up. Brian, I'm going to let you take us home.
All right. Well, as always, obviously, thanks for listening and thanks for sticking it out with us on this longer episode.
Oh, hold on. Time out. I do have one more thing to add.
Okay.
So, and maybe you were going to cover this, but I just want to throw some out there. So we are going to be doing a bonus episode that will come out on Wednesday of this week. It is currently Sunday, January 12th. This will come out on Wednesday, the 15th.
I was hoping you were not going to say that because I don't know if we're going to have time to. So now that Andrew put that out into the universe, we're going to have to try and squeeze that out.
No, we're going to do it because we were actually going to try and do it last week and it didn't work out. So if I got to sacrifice a weeknight, then so be it. But one thing I just want to put out there regarding that show is if you listen to our show and you're an avid hockey fan, which those two things tie into each other, because if you don't love hockey, why would you listen to us of all people? But whatever team you're a fan of, and I guess it doesn't even matter if it's team specific, biased or unbiased, if you know us, text us, or if you don't, send us a DM, send us a message, an email, whatever. We want to know who your favorite commentary team is in hockey. And it doesn't matter if it's a national broadcast team or if it's, regional specific to your team. We just want to know. Tell us who your favorite commentary duo is and tell us something you like about them. Doesn't have to be anything fancy or in depth. We just want to hear about it. And
we would like to try and keep it current though
yes, absolutely. Yes.
What we're trying to do here, we would like to try and keep it current. I mean, not that I'd be worried about anybody digging Paul Romanuk out of the grave or anything like that. But,
I could. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. Actually, is Paul Romanuk alive? God, I hope he's still with us now. I said that.
He should be.
Yeah, let's see. He is still alive.
Okay, good.
Really felt really bad if he wasn't, because that sounded dark. But definitely not a commentator I ever.
Yeah, no, I don't want to hear like, oh, I loved Al Michaels' call of the game against Russia in 1980. Yeah, okay, so did everybody. I mean, current hockey team or hockey analysts. So we just want to know that. But with that being said, I'll shut up and let Brian get us out of here.
Yeah, just another point on that too. If we'd let you do all time, I'm sure we would just get waves of Doc Emmerichs. And as much as I love Doc and he's my favorite commentator of all time, for what we're trying to do here, let's keep it current. So get those to us with your questions. Obviously at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast on Instagram and at Brian Fresh Ice. We're on Facebook, Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, leave your question down in the comments. But no, Andrew, I think you covered everything else we were hoping to get to today. So. I think until we'll obviously squeeze that next episode out on Wednesday. That will be a bonus video as well. We'll be doing video for that, not just the audio. So obviously something to look forward to with that. But other than that, we covered a ton this week. I'm very happy with everything we got to. So Wednesday's video won't really have any news. It'll just be kind of us having some fun with these lists. If anybody, again, has any questions or comments, leave those with us and we will address them on that next bonus episode as well. And until then, we are done.